Hey, Tom.
Tom, come
Welcome.
on in.
Oh, I can just say hi?
You can
Yes,
just say
we're
hello.
on the air.
Yeah.
All right.
Tom Cavanagh.
We are talking. It's funny. We're just going over sitcoms and stuff. And when you walked in, we're talking about Gary Marshall.
Oh, jeez.
And some of the ones he did were good, and there was a couple of bad ones.
I kind of feel like he did more damage to
Whoa.
smorks
Wow,
than
you're
anybody.
taking a shot early
Yeah.
in the morning.
Yeah.
Wow, more damage to sitcoms.
Damage.
What's your position, counselor?
Well, we were just watching Mork from Ork visit Happy Days.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing, Gary? Like,
yeah, but
like
yeah, I mean,
because
Jim, can you weigh in on this? That would be more like, wouldn't that be like sign of the times kind of thing a little bit?
part of it was, yeah, he did a lot for, I guess, a
Was it-
certain genre of
Wasn't
sitcom.
Norman Lear like writing like actual shows
Yeah.
that actually talked about
yeah,
stuff?
yeah, sure. But
Yeah.
just like,
Gary Marshall's
Big
like,
Bang,
there's that
Silicon
stuff.
Valley, Big Bang Theory. Do you know what
Right,
I mean? It's a
exactly.
big old country right now.
Yeah.
But then we're watching,
guess.
what's it called? Me and the Chimp
Me and the Chimp.
was a show from 1972 that went 1 year, and we just watched the opening of it. It's so bad.
Yeah.
But what you want to do is be in that pitch room, I think. Guys, I got it. So it's a chimp and me.
Right.
That's not far.
Sold.
That's
Yeah.
not far from what it was. We
No.
just read it was a dentist, Mike Reynolds, and so that someone finds a chimp, and the antics ensue, and that became a show.
Yeah, we were watching like the opening credits, and it is just a guy like, oh, I'm trying to hose off the lawn, but there's a chimp here. Like, how am I going to get through this?
Just the tomfoolery and the chicanery they get up to.
Right. Don't you see,
On
folks?
Mitch and the chimp.
We could go 10 seasons with this. Everything is more difficult with a chimp and hilarious.
Do you ever work with an animal? I worked with a chimp. I did a pilot for MTV in 2003. It was awful. And my co-star was a chimp named Mikey.
Actual chimp.
Yeah, an actual chimp, and it was kind of cool to do. And actually, on one of Louis' episodes, we had a chimp, but it didn't make the air because Nick DiPaolo was supposed to get angry and scream, but they couldn't have the chimp in the room because, like, the chimp will attack you if you show that kind of aggression.
Yeah.
So they had to shoot it separately, and it was a whole fucking mess. So twice I've worked with chimps, and it's you never worked with an animal?
Oh yeah. That's the old adage, right? Don't.
Yeah, don't do that.
Basically, don't do that. You know what I mean?
No kids or chimps, right?
Yeah, that's what they say. Yeah, and no, don't shoot on the water too. I think after Jaws that became a thing, where it's like,
Yeah.
we don't do that. You know what I mean, that's like
Knock
you
that
can
off.
shoot 8 pages a day or like 1/8 of a day, depending on where you're shooting. I do remember one time doing a movie where there was a cage of chimps, and we had to go by that cage of chimps, and they were just like throwing crap at us.
They would actually
They're
throw
just
it.
like, oh, this is our day. They're like, they couldn't believe it. They're like, oh, look, there's film cameras and people walk. They walk right by. Splat, splat, splat.
You imagine if the chimps understood there's a camera and we can throw shit at these people?
Hey,
Yeah.
are you out? Are you out here? Give me Johnny. Give me some.
We need more food. We need to make more shit.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly right. Guys, this is gonna go on all day. They film all day, so look, we need to like
Keep
have
eating,
our,
guys.
have our artillery ready to go.
What was the project?
Oh gosh, I
You don't remember?
did like 1940, but when we worked together way back then.
I
so-
didn't even think you'd remember because I had a small part on his show.
Dude, like that, when he came on, it was like legends because Mitch was there, you were there. There was just like it was just like, oh my god, these guys? Are you kidding me? Like there was doing that show where the show that you worked on was like a nonstop cavalcade of like regular cast who were nobodies, like me and just a bunch of nobodies, and then the guys who did the show were the Letterman people, and they brought on their favorite people, and I always felt like you guys were there, like Mitch and Jim and John Goodman did the show. Like that.
No, did he?
I think they brought in like the guys that like owed them something. I really had the sense like, listen, you can either do these appearances or you can come do our show and we'll pay you handsomely. And then we always felt like, oh, okay, they somehow these guys lost a bet and now they have to come. Now they have to come and do it. We literally, you were on like episode 3 or 4. You
It
were
was
like
episode
early,
3, yeah.
Yeah, early on, and they were.
Oh,
just,
really? Because the show got huge.
No, I mean.
I mean, it had a pretty
The
major
show, by the way,
following.
is Ed. That was on. He
Ed
played
had
a.
Ed had a pretty real
But
following.
that was again like back in the day. Like it had like a good like 10, 12 million. Nowadays people would lose their minds. Back then the network was like, yeah, I don't know, we'll cancel you. I think literally like there was
I
like,
see.
Because
Back
that
then,
was a
like
whole
everybody was
whole
actually
different-
tuned into TV.
Yeah,
and
whole
Mike
different-
Starr was in that show.
Yeah,
he was
Mike
really
Starr.
good. You know Mike Starr is Sam. He's
don't think
you've
so.
seen him a million times.
Yeah,
He's in everything.
Good fellas. Miller's Crossing. Miller's Crossing. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
The guy when the main guy busts a big lug's nose. Hey, why'd you hit me, Joe?
Yeah.
Early on in the thing, that's Mike Starr.
I
he was
see.
also in Goodfellas too.
He plays.
He's
He's the guy that Ray Liotta and De Niro are talking to, and he's like, "What about the security?" He goes, "Security." You're looking at it. He's in every fucking movie. He's
That's
done scenes with
awesome.
Nicholson. When I first met him, I'm like, I know, like, I didn't know his name was Mike Starr. Like, I know you. Where do I know you from? And he goes, wait, you want my resume? Like, I'm like, I was so embarrassed. I was like, such a
He was
dick.
incredibly. That was an incredibly well-connected dude. Like one of those guys. Like I'm gonna go talk to. Like, and it was just like every name in the book. Like so and so. And he after a while was like, this show is not good enough for me. And he lasted a year. And he's like, all right.
Oh, I didn't know he only did a year on
I
it.
think he did a year or two, but then he was just like he had. Mike Starr was one of those guys that like for that what he looked like and his talent ability, everybody wanted him.
So is that stressful then back then when like you're getting 10, 12 million viewers and it's still every season you don't know if they're going to pick you up?
No, I mean you're. I can see why it might be stressful. We were like, "Are you kidding me?" You know,
Right,
literally
you
just
just
like,
always-
we're on the air.
Right.
No way. Like literally, there was like because there was West Wing. There was NBC had big shows, Friends, and then it was us and Rob Burnett, who's one of my all-time greatest friends. He would just like he would always say like we just got in under the radar. Like that show was about a bowling alley lawyer.
Yeah.
And it was an hour of television time every Wednesday. It's just like,
Wait, your show was an hour?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're literally like, what were they thinking? Like an hour worth of, for 4 years. You're just like, they lost their minds, Like nowadays you'd be like, haha, no, but what really do you have to give us?
And it
You know
wasn't
what I mean?
it wasn't a wacky sitcom. It was like
No.
a hour drama.
I forgot that was an hour.
Yeah.
Well, Michael Ian
Yeah.
Black was very good in that
Yeah.
show. I forgot that was an hour.
Yeah, like it was the Letterman guys, so they had game. Like they were really like Rob Burnett and John Beckman were really like sharp writers, and they also had like that ability to do the heart thing. But nowadays, that would be if they didn't do 30 minutes, there's just no way a show like that would last.
Was there ever
an hour.
talk about knocking it down to a half hour to make it cheaper?
I think when they were making it for CBS initially, and I think those guys at some point there was a half-hour version of it, but. Back in the day, they were like, "No, you're Letterman. You guys want to do an hour long? Yeah, okay, great, let's do it."
Have they talked about a reunion or a reboot or anything like that? Because
It's funny, right? 'Cause
I
now
mean,
you see it all the time.
yeah, because like
Yeah.
Will and Grace is back on, and Netflix they never come out with data, right? But the one thing that they put out was they put out how the rankings of which shows were viewed the most times within 24 hours of being released, like binge.
Sure.
And Gilmore Girls was number one.
Well, yeah, that
Like
was
their additional Gilmore Girls season that they did exclusively for Netflix was enormous.
Yeah, that felt like a sister show for us. They were on their numbers were much smaller. They were on a smaller network, but they had a loyal following, and we had the same thing on a larger network. But I think, the Gilmore Girls, I can see why they'd want to reboot, or what was the Veronica Mars, or
Right.
Will and Grace, but I don't know.
Nobody wants to
I don't
do
think
Ed.
Anybody wants to see hey, what's a 45-year-old Ed up to? I just don't think there's. I haven't heard a single thing. Like maybe from the diehard fans, they're like, hey, we know what we should bring back, and there's like 4 of them. You know what I mean?
Right,
And they're all sort
right.
of semi-related to us. I don't think that there's a clamor or a demand for that.
Thank
at all.
God for the Flash, then, right?
I asked Eric McCormick. I asked him. I was like, so who's paying who? You know what I mean? He's like, you suck, Kevin. I'm like, are they paying you? You paying them to come back and do that show again?
You, by the way, you only got 83 episodes out of had four years, so you missed syndication by 17 episodes. I mean, it's not like you
Yeah.
missed it by 2.
And again, like I know that, no, exactly. But at the same time, it was a very weird thing where it's just like, we really proceeded from gratitude, as obnoxious as that sounds. We were like, what? Another year? 80? We just,
So after 4 seasons, because I always you always hear that, but then you kind of get a little bit married to the yay, this is happening again. So when it doesn't happen again, as much as you want to be like, I wasn't even supposed to, so we're happy.
I think
You're
I think you're exactly right. But for some reason, we had Rob and I we'd talk about this before this thing even aired, that if we got 4 years, holy cow, we never kind of lost sight of if we got 4 years, nobody wants to be on this, on the downside. It kind of felt like that was one of those rare shows that we ended with a marriage, we were still wanted. And I think that you don't want to be sticking around when you're not wanted. As hard as it is to leave, 4 years felt like, great, that's phenomenal. And you would know more about this than me, Jim, but it felt like syndication was changing then. Like 5 years earlier, if you got that, that big number,
Sure.
then you were going to be like, oh, you're going to be Seinfeld, you're going to be rich. But I don't think that was ever going to be our case. That, we have the Ed money to rely on.
Maybe not. Yeah. How did they tell you were canceled? I always like to know that. How did you find out?
Literally every year, it felt like the sword of Damocles was hanging over our head. We just felt like every year we're back. That's great. Like they never. It's funny because when a network undergoes a regime change, then the new president was like, "You're not ours,"
Right.
And we had one or two guys like shepherding us along, and then those guys were gone. Then there was another person, and that was gone. Then Zucker was there. Then I think a lot of those guys were just like, yeah, if we could just manage to get this hour off the air, but the numbers were solid enough that it was kind of. Nowadays, they just cancel you. They'd be like, we don't care. We don't care about numbers or backlash or anything. Back then, there was a certain ethos. Mike O'Malley kind of felt like, and I like, I'm sure Mike. Mike did a Mike O'Malley show that was touted, and Heather Graham did a show that was really touted, and they sunk all the money into the promos, and then, the numbers weren't where they wanted them, so they canceled them after like an episode or two. And back then, it was like, what? How could you sink all this money and do all your research and then take them off the air? Don't you look like fools? And then it became like, we don't care.
Yeah, it doesn't
and
matter.
once there was no payback, now it was just let's cancel everything.
The same thing happened with Whitney. They spent like a shitload of money on promo. I remember being in LA and seeing fucking
all over
building-size posters of her and Chris D'Elia.
Yeah.
And then they
you couldn't do
canceled
anything on the internet without a
Seeing
Whitney
Whitney.
thing coming on first.
Yeah, and she said that they canceled it. That she knew that they weren't coming back or whatever. However many episodes they did, they might have even done a full season.
They did a full season.
Oh, sorry. Okay, and then Chris D'Elia, I think they offered something else too.
Undateable.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
And then she
I
knew
did
like,
that.
ugh.
I did Undateable.
When it was live, or
I did one episode of Undateable.
What was Undateable? I know the show, but what was it about?
Well,
It
they
was just
just-
a bunch of. It was comics.
Ron Funches was on it.
Ron Funches and Brent Morin and there was just a bunch of guys who, were basically in a bar. Like Brent and Chris were roommates, and literally, I remember on the episode that I did, there was like Chris was such a good drunk, and they were like, oh, you know what? It felt like the bridge between like studio audience, which is what I did, but then halfway through my show, Bill Lawrence, the showrunner, walked in. He was like, all right, you know what? Let's change this. You're going to come in and you want to do this, and then and it just became this live thing. And the audience, and he was just like, Bill was so quick with the stuff. He's like, you're going to do this. You're going to come in. Chris, you're drunk, and then it just ended up being this big long kind of thing. They're like, this is money. Why would we like script it? And so then it became basically the live version. They went on tour. They did a stand-up tour across America.
Yeah, like they literally started doing it. Started as a sitcom, and then it became a live, like every Friday night or whatever whatever night it was on. That half hour, they did it live.
Oh wow,
They were
so great.
Those guys were
How many years did it last?
2.
Okay.
I think
two.
all told,
Yeah.
with the scripted and then the live version combined, 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be heartbreaking. Like Steve Burns, a friend of mine, and he had that show called Sullivan and Sons. I think lasted 2 seasons.
TBS, right?
Oh, yeah, it was on TBS. But it's got to just suck. Like you think, okay, this is it. This is gonna.
Sure.
And then like
It's
they
just a thing.
Smash.
yeah, it's just a yeah. You think you got MASH or Seinfeld, and then they just take it away for whatever reason. It's like fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It can be heartbreaking.
Did you after that? Did you have a hard time? Like, did you say, okay, I want to get something else just like this, and then you're fighting for that, or did you have a downtime where you're like,
No, back in the day, they were like, I'm Canadian, so I was like, I thought when Ed was over, I'd done like Providence before that, but Ed was like the first kind of larger profile thing where we were just assaulted with like the promos and the media and that kind of thing. It was like part of a big deal. But being Canadian and having done a decade worth of theater, I just thought once this is over, because that's the Canadian experience. You can do like, I remember people from some of the longest running shows, Beachcombers and Street Legal up in Canada, which ran like 17 years or something like that. Those guys were then like, well, I'm auditioning for, the part of the guy's best friend on, they were just like, they went back into the breadline. And in America, that it doesn't work that way. Once you've you've been promoted, you kind of stay
right
at a certain level. I was not expecting that at all. I was like, right, I'm gonna go like maybe Matthew Perry's got like a best friend that shows up every fourth episode. I'll be that guy. You know what I mean? But it wasn't. I found that when I came out, it was a whole different shift. And so, they were just saying, do you want to do this, and this? And being living in New York, I did a show about a musical, a guy who's like an A&R rep, a small A&R rep that lasted like maybe 4 seconds. That actually is a decent show about like when you talk about getting your heart broken. I really liked that show because it was about a music file. It was a guy who was like small, signing like small acts. But every episode we'd have like a Ben Folds and then an up and coming person who an unheard of person, and then like John Cougar, you know, like so, and literally like half your episode you'd if you like music, which is like this is a dream. You know, the people were great. Judy Greer, who's like phenomenally talented, and I were like sort of love interest. They were like a really tremendous group run by this guy Michael Rauch, who's like one of the greatest human beings in showbiz, like an actual good human being, and I was on Conan, and I was getting ready to promo it because it was on that night. Like I'm in the green room, and there's a knock on the door, and I think it's like, oh hey, we're ready for you, Jim, and it's Michael, and he's like, hey, so they pulled us, and literally I was the only reason, as you know, the only reason you're on like Conan or Jay or any of those shows, Letterman, is just to talk about
the project,
the project, right? And so next knock on the door is Conan going, hey, so I'm cool if you want to leave, but I have you for a double segment, and I got no one else, you know. And he's like, "Do you want to go on? I heard that you just got axed," you know? And I'm just like, "Yeah, no, I'll go on." And we're literally walking out, and they're like, you know, the band's starting to play, and he goes, "Should we talk about the thing?" And I'm like, "I don't know if I might not know what I might not say the right thing, you know. Like, let's talk about anything." So literally, we sit down, and all we were going to talk about was music and Love Monkey. We sit down, and Conan goes, "Do you live in New York, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "You bike, right? You're in the park. What about those bikers?" And literally, like, there was 2 segments of like, but it was one of the funnest times I've ever been on a show because he was, you know, he's so quick and funny, and we just made stuff up, you know.
Plus, you don't have to worry about promoting anything. Like,
Nothing.
you're now just hanging out on a TV show.
And then I was doing like a theater piece, and Conan had me on like 6 months later, and he's like, "Now we're talking about it." I'm like, "Oh yeah." And then we told that story, and the audience was like, "What?"
Right as you're about to go on.
Yeah, and you know, everybody gets those memos about, you know, Jim Norton is on the show tonight and this kind of thing, right? You know, and so somebody would have had to know, and yet they're like, let's cancel it.
I would have been fucking Peter Finch in Network on that first appearance. I would have melted down publicly and had a major problem. Yeah, I never would have handled that well.
You would have been outraged and like yelling
crazy,
about it?
or just complaining. Yeah. Kevin Hart had the same thing though when he was at the upfront. They told him, like when they were about to announce him in his new show, that they said, "Oh no, but they pulled the show." His agent goes, "Kevin, I don't know what's going on." He talked about it in his book.
Yeah,
and it's like show business. It's crazy, right?
It's so cruel.
They tell him they tell him when he's there, you're not going on stage because it's over. The show's not being made. And then he snuck into the upfront parties anyway.
And he went and just experienced it because he's got a pretty positive attitude. Which again, I envy that. I envy your ability.
Like, blowtorch. Yeah, I'm burning this fucking place down.
I envy your ability to go out there and be funny on Conan. Good for you. I mean, for them to tell you right there.
It was crazy. It was like that. Literally, I thought it was a segment producer going, "Hey, let's go," so, you know. And then it was like, you know,
you're done.
And when you think, I remember like parsing that. It was all happened so quickly, right? But I remember thinking backwards, how good of him to like grab a cab, come uptown, knock on the door himself to tell me to be there, as opposed to like, "Hey, buddy, just so you know."
Sure.
You know
you sound like because otherwise you tape it, it's gonna get out that the show's canceled, and then you're on promoting this show that everybody knows is canceled, and
they're like, you know, the little bumps. Tom Cavanagh, look, coming up next, you know, like it is like, maybe not, you know.
Oh, it's awful.
Does that stuff like harden you to the business, meaning that? You know, because obviously the only people who do this stuff, it's like their dream and their passion, and like, you know, there's all this joy that comes with the success of it. But then just like that, just some guy at the worst possible moment just comes to you and be like, "Yeah, that's not happening." Like this whole thing that you spent weeks thinking about and you're about to go on TV to talk about, it's all over. Goodbye.
Yeah.
And like you have to go from, you know, A to W.
Yeah, I think it's like any other walk of life, like what you're like, where your bullshit meter is, you know. It's like I don't know how many times I walked in and go, "This guy's not telling me the truth." Do you know what I mean? Like you just so over the years you meet these people and you're like, "Nope, yes." You know what I mean?
I think that every time I walk in a room and someone says, "Good to see you," I'm like, "Fucking liar." No, it's not.
So when do you start to feel comfortable with a gig? Like, do you have to
I have a phrase where it's like, and I think it serves well, especially I'm doing The Flash now with a bunch of younger actors. I remember the beginning, you know, because I was that way too, you know. You're like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. We're, you know, everyone's treating us so well, you know, and they really like us." And you know, I gathered them, and I remember, okay, 4 words: they're not your friends. You know what I mean? And it's just literally that served me well. It's, I don't take offense, you know, but I also like, you're not my friend. You'll fire me in a heartbeat when this thing.
I don't have any expectations, but at the same
time, we're not friends. You know, we're gonna be great. It's gonna be great while it's going well. It's gonna be.
We're
great.
not enemies.
You're not my friend. We're not enemies. It's like you're gonna like. I'm a realistic, so I'm not gonna do you favors, and you know, sacrifice any dignity for you, because at the end of the day, you're just going to be like, all right, well, you've served your purpose.
Right.
Next
it's a
thing.
gig.
Yeah, exactly.
I get that. Well, so are you happy? You got to be happy. I was thinking about you being on The Flash because your character, like, consistently dies and then comes back as somebody else. So it's like you get to this thing in the script where you're like, oh, no, I'm dying. And then you get the next script and be like, oh, great, I'm coming back.
Yeah. I just saw that. You'll talk about that later. Anyway,
Al Franken?
it had breasts in it, and I was like,
was it the Ariana Huffington picture?
Yeah. She was just like, it's just one of the things you guys talk about. Anyway,
I'd love to take those pictures with her.
Would you?
Love to.
You have a crush on Ariana Huffington?
She's sexy, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I used to do the thing on Leno with her every week, and she was, once every other week or whatever. Yeah, she's sexy.
I saw her riding a bicycle one time. I mean, I wasn't turned on. I was just like, hey, it's Ariana Huffington. She's riding a bicycle. Yeah, she did.
Smash.
Crashed into a parking meter.
Cat sound.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I just kept walking.
Where were we?
you were talking about the show.
Yeah, the fact that on The Flash, you get to die and then come back.
I feel like Huffington's a better subject matter than The Flash, but anyway, no. So the great thing about The Flash is this, like, so I'm the character that I consistently play is the Reverse Flash, and so he's the nemesis of the Flash. The Flash wears a red suit, Reverse Flash wears a yellow suit. I felt like that box was never going to get checked, and then suddenly superheroes were huge, and next thing you know, I'm a guy who's getting tailored for a yellow super suit. You know what I mean?
It's amazing.
It's kind of crazy great because that Reverse Flash is their Lex Luthor. If for comic book fans, the Reverse Flash is a big deal in that world, right? And so to be that guy, for these fans was like really? Are you kidding me? And then we found out pretty early on that you can't have the Flash battle the Reverse Flash all the time because it's when I do it I do the voices down here and it's like, you'll never get me, Flash. We'll fight for centuries. They fought for like 100 years and years and years, right?
Chasing each other. Oh my God! Yeah, I didn't know you were that fast, but I'm really fast too.
And so in the first season we did a thing where I'm playing a guy in a wheelchair, but he's actually the Reverse Flash, and you don't know. And we did that full season. Then afterwards we were like, I guess we can't really. The whole season was like unveiling that was actually me. That's episode 11. Episode 15, I kill one of the leads. Episode 22, the Flash finds out. But 23, we fight. He wins because he's the Flash. And so then we're like, so season 2, repeat.
Yeah.
And so they're like, no, we can't do that. And I was like, what if I play a guy who looks like a bad guy that he's not? So we did that. Then season 3, I got tired of that. So I was like, well, what if I play a comedy guy? So we did that. And then season 4, I'm like, doing other things. And
was Reverse Flash totally gone?
No.
Oh, okay.
That's the great thing is like, so on any given episode, I'll play, 2 characters. I'll play like the funny guy, or I'll play like the guy from like, Earth 2, or I'll play the Reverse Flash. There's always the possibility that guy's going to come back and start kicking the shit out of Barry Allen, which is great.
It's like a David Lynch series.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, it's really
complicated. It's good.
It's like the nice thing about doing one of these shows is like, so that the trope they've set up is that for every Earth there's another Earth with your doppelgangers in it, but they're not they're not you two guys. They're like. They look exactly like you,
That's what I
but
meant.
you can be anything you want.
Oh.
So literally, it's like, I come from Earth 24, and I'm this.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so it's great.
It's got to keep it from getting boring. You're doing all this different stuff.
Yeah, because if you're lucky enough to be in a long-running show, normally it's like, hey, Sam Malone on Cheers, which is great. At the same time, it's like,
but imagine if there
9
was
years in,
like Infinity Earths with Infinity Sam Malones. Sure. Whatever Sam Malone wanted to do.
Sam Malone comes in and he's like, he's a gunslinger. Yeah, he's killing people. Yeah, great.
See that cutie pie right over there in the corner? His name's Rob.
Hi,
and
Rob.
he is
Hi, Tom.
massive fan of The Flash.
Oh, is that right?
I like all of them. Legends of
Easy.
Tomorrow,
What? Wait,
Arrow,
what?
but The Flash is by far the best
your
one.
favorite. Okay,
100%.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and
Good.
your characters on it are awesome.
Yeah.
do you like Tom in the show?
Love them. HR was the best.
good. Oh, look at you clearly do watch.
Oh, yeah, Earth 19, HR.
HR was a con man, kind of like an Owen Wilson kind of type.
He was
you
great.
look great. Can I have your shirt? That's amazing. Could I have your shirt too? That guy, it's just.
By the way, this is how pathetic I am.
Yeah.
For a brief second,
Yes!
when he said you look great, I wanted to say thank you, and I realized he was doing a
You
character.
thought he had just lost his train of thought.
For a
He's like,
second,
"Jim
I thought
looks
he
so
just
good.
noticed that I
have to-"
look
Oh, hey
good.
Jim.
That's what a great actor. He almost. Oh, thank God you moved on, or I would have just thought, thanks, dude. I would have
I wish
wrecked
I
the
had.
scene.
That would have been a solid moment. I think,
Yeah, it
don't
would
you
have
think?
been humiliating.
Rob, who wins in a fight, Reverse Flash or Arrow, Stephen Amell Arrow?
Oh, Reverse Flash.
Good.
100%.
Good.
No, the
Okay,
Reverse
good.
Flash is like that guy's like. I mean, not because I play it, but just in the thing. Like that guy's like got a vibrating hand, speed of light. Like he's just like
That
this
vibrating
bad
hand must
dude.
come in handy.
The vibrating hand is amazing. Oh, I win again. I'm done again.